Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am dealing with a passionate topic, which I know is not unusual, and people are taking sides a lot. I know I call these messages politics of Caesar or the politics of Jesus, but typically it's a blending of both. Hamas was elected to power in 2006. And on October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched, as you know, a major attack in Israel from the Gaza Strip, firing thousands of rockets and sending fighters across the border. The assault targeted Israeli towns and army bases near Gaza, resulting really in mass casualties and the taking of Israeli hostages by militants. The Israeli military responded with widespread airstrikes and mobilized its military, right, for what's been a prolonged campaign that continues to this day. The attack marked the deadliest day in Israel's history, with hundreds killed, and has led to intense fighting, indictments for war crimes, and a declaration of genocide against Palestinians. The incident triggered really a new phase of the Israel-Hamas conflict, with severe and unimaginable consequences for both Gaza and Israel. Some experienced the violence as shock, others as a norm. Others sadly saw this as an opportunity for profit and escalation. In our current news media cycle, things move very fast, especially fast as profiteers and pundits and pastors and politicians compete for attention. With a seemingly unending election cycle and season here in the U.S. and the presence of Donald Trump, there's little room often in our news diet for updates from the Middle East. That's just been the way it is, let alone getting any really substantive coverage of the segregated and stratified lives of the Israelis and the Palestinians. The October 7th attacks forced really the enduring conflict, I should say, the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians was really instigated all the way back in 1948 by Western powers when they displaced Palestinians and created the State of Israel. But the October 7th attacks forced that enduring conflict onto the front pages, really, right, of major publications and into our news feeds. Couldn't ignore it. And many people in the U.S. and the West, they really hold little to no knowledge of the Middle East, its peoples, and their histories. And if the coverage is seen, it is often biased towards one side or the other. Or people hear about the violence, they just believe, well, that's just to be expected from those people, right? A detailed Gallup survey back in 2019 showed that 71% of Americans learned very little or nothing at all about U.S. foreign policy in school. So for many of us with little working knowledge of the region, the story is news, becomes news, when we get the next Instagram story or TikTok video or viral post that captures our attention. And that tends to be our extent of our education and our learnings when it comes to U.S. foreign policy. Man, we become passionate then. And sadly, once again, for a small but vocal people, a group of people, October 7th really became a launching pad for opportunities to expand their reach and their influence into our pocketbooks. Many have noted that Benjamin Netanyahu has used the conflict to shield himself from many investigations that were ongoing with respect to him. Far-right Israelis are leveraging this opportunity to expand illegal settlements. And the UN laid out a detailed report of how many corporations like Lockheed Martin and Amazon and Google are reaping unbelievable great financial benefits from the expanding and ongoing conflict. Wherever we find ourselves entering this conflict, we've got to slow down and remember who we are as followers of Jesus, right? We got to just take a breath for a moment. And we need to tell the truth of Jesus's love and Jesus's concern for the poor, the marginalized, and the neglected. Since October 7th, 2023, I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about the people who claim the same faith as I do. And I've also learned a lot about the limits of humanity to see beyond our own echo chambers and our cultural bubbles and algorithm-driven media streams. I've had to work hard to hold fast to the beauty and resistance that is available at all times. Not choosing one or the other 100% of the time, but holding both sides, both the amazing and the hard, the awesome and the awful, in a godly tension. Grief, resistance, and simplifying complexity are what stand out to me. What I am able to be sad about, I kind of think signals what I value. And if I'm unable to grieve the fact that 48 hostages still remain in Gaza, then my heart is unhealthy. Simultaneously, if I'm unable to grieve the decades of displacement, occupation, murder, and violence against the Palestinians, then something is woefully broken within me. The Apostle Paul, in line with Jesus' call to love our enemies as ourselves, calls us to mourn with those who mourn. We see that in Romans 12:15. So I must continually push to cultivate my heart, mind, and hands to be soft, open, and willing to hold God's love closer than my anger, my confusion, and yes, my rage. I must resist injustice and the temptation to be violent, vengeful, judgmental, condescending, and indifferent every moment. Social, print, digital, legacy, and mass media are all pulling to one side or the other in this. They are competing for our eyeballs, right? In an economy that is just built on outrage and attention. I must say no to dismissing people made in the image of God. That includes Israelis and Palestinians. The answer to oppression is not a different oppressor. Love is a transformative, reconciling force. Hate only leads to more hate. Violence only begets more violence. So immediately and ultimately, non-violent resistance, whatever the consequences, must be the goal and practice for Jesus' followers. You know, I'll be honest, at times I use big words, concepts, and metaphors to kind of hide what I'm really thinking and feeling, especially if I'm afraid of the outcome. I can be evasive and unnecessarily long-winded, as you know, when I think someone could be offended or reject me. None of us like to be rejected. But some things like, quote unquote, we were not meant to kill one another. Some things like that do not need to be complex. And no matter how much someone hates or harms me, or yes, even those I love, my desires for and my direct violence towards them is wholly unjustifiable as a follower of Jesus. There is no basis whatsoever in the Christian faith for anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, terrorism, exploitation, or violence of any kind. Yet the teachings of Jesus get twisted to make room for all kinds of nonsensical trash. I must trust God to judge, and not me. I am called to love, to receive love from God and others, and to give it away generously as best as I can at all times by God's grace. And I am to call others to do the same in humility and service to all people made in God's image. And that includes Palestinians and Israelis. I am unsure of what the future holds, but I know who holds the future, right? And it is my fervent hope that all of us are able to grieve the immense suffering around us, resist the temptation to be violent, and to live out the simple and difficult love to love our neighbors well. And our neighbors include every person made in the image of God, Palestinian and Israeli. God bless you. Love you. Peace be with you.